The power of eye contact. In the delicate dance of human attraction, few elements are as universally powerful as eye contact. More than a simple meeting of glances, it's a silent conversation, a direct channel to someone's inner world. When you hold someone's gaze, not in an invasive or forceful way, but with a steady softness, you invite them to experience connection without saying a word. Eye contact bypasses the filters of logic and pierces straight into the emotional core. Psychologists have studied this phenomenon extensively, revealing that mutual gaze activates the same parts of the brain associated with pleasure, trust, and emotional bonding. It's no wonder that prolonged eye contact between two people can ignite feelings of intimacy, even when very little is spoken. But why does something so simple feel so profound? The answer lies in vulnerability. Looking into someone's eyes is a deeply vulnerable act, especially when it's held just a few seconds longer than what's considered normal. That extra moment, when neither of you breaks away, is where the magic begins. It signals confidence, interest, and presence. It shows that you're not afraid to truly see and be seen. In a world full of distractions and shallow interactions, that kind of focused attention becomes magnetic. But there is an art to it. Too much eye contact too soon can feel intrusive. Not enough can come off as disinterest or insecurity. The key is to calibrate. When you're speaking, hold their gaze about 60 to 70% of the time. When you're listening, increase that number. People tend to fall for those who truly listen to them, and your eyes will say more than your words ever could. There's also the subtle technique of what psychologists call the triangle gaze, looking from one eye to the other, then down to the lips, then back to the eyes. This tiny movement activates a sense of intimacy and curiosity. It suggests not only interest, but an unspoken question. Do you feel this too? Another key is softness. Your eye contact should never be a stare. It should feel warm, curious, open, like you're quietly saying, "I'm here with you." Pair it with a faint smile, and you instantly become more approachable and attractive. If you really want to turn this into a powerful technique, combine it with a moment of silence. Let your eyes hold theirs just a second longer than they expect. Say nothing. Just be there. That pause becomes unforgettable. And then walk away. Not out of manipulation, but to let the moment echo. Let the silence linger in their memory. People don't fall in love with constant stimulation. They fall in love with how you made them feel in those quiet, charged moments. Eye contact is not about dominance or seduction in the traditional sense. It's about saying with your presence alone, "I see you, and I'm not afraid of what I see." In the end, people remember those who made them feel seen, not just looked at, truly seen. The power of eye contact lies in its ability to reach someone's emotional core without words, without effort, and without agenda. Use it wisely, and it becomes one of the most potent tools of attraction you'll ever possess. And once you've opened that invisible doorway with your gaze, something deeper begins to stir. Mastering the art of listening. In a world overflowing with voices trying to be heard, one of the most captivating acts is choosing to truly listen. Not the kind of passive, surface-level listening that fills most conversations, but the type that disarms. The type that makes someone pause and realize they're not just being heard, they're being understood. And that changes everything. Real listening isn't about staying quiet while waiting your turn to speak. It's about becoming fully present. It's about giving someone your undivided attention without rushing to add your opinion, fix their feelings, or shift the spotlight back to yourself. That kind of attention is rare, and people can feel it immediately. When someone feels genuinely listened to, their nervous system begins to relax. They feel safer, more open. They may even begin revealing things they didn't expect to share. You become the space where their voice feels valued, where their story matters. And that emotional safety is one of the most underrated, powerful tools of attraction. The first step is eye contact. Look at them, not through them. Let your gaze say, "I'm here. I'm not in a rush." Then listen not just to their words, but to the emotion underneath. Listen for hesitation, for excitement, for sadness disguised as humor. When you notice those layers, reflect them gently. Say things like, "That sounds really important to you," or "I can tell that meant a lot." These phrases are bridges, signals that you understand more than what's being said. But the real magic happens in your stillness, in not interrupting, in allowing the silence between their words to exist without pressure. Most people jump in too soon, thinking silence is awkward. But silence can be sacred. It gives room for more truth to rise. And when you can hold that space comfortably, you show a kind of emotional strength that most people crave but rarely find. Another powerful tool is remembering. Bring up something they mentioned weeks ago. Ask how that thing turned out. Refer back to something small they said in passing. These moments prove that their words landed, that you held on to them. It's a quiet but unforgettable way of saying, "You matter. I was paying attention." There's also listening with your body, nodding, leaning in slightly, matching their energy. These subtle physical cues show alignment, resonance. And when done with sincerity, not as a tactic, but as a reflection of your presence, they deepen the connection effortlessly. True listening is magnetic because it's rare. Most people are used to conversations that feel like competitions. When you offer something different, something calm, grounded, and sincere, you immediately become memorable. Over time, people start to associate your presence with emotional ease. They feel lighter around you, more open, more themselves. And that's where real attraction lives, not in the drama, but in the depth. Because when someone feels heard, they begin to speak from a deeper place. And in that place, something else starts to awaken. A playful kind of light that opens the door for the next level of connection. The magnetic smile technique. There's something disarming about a real smile. Not the practiced one used in professional settings or the polite one offered to strangers, but the kind that rises from something genuine within. The kind of smile that reaches the eyes, softens the shoulders of the person in front of you, and lingers just a second longer than expected. That's what makes a smile magnetic. It's not the act itself, but the feeling behind it. Human beings are wired to respond to smiles. It's evolutionary. When we see someone smile with warmth and sincerity, our brains release chemicals like dopamine and oxytocin, chemicals associated with pleasure, bonding, and trust. But more than that, a smile signals safety. It tells someone, "I see you, I welcome you, I want to connect." But not all smiles carry the same weight. The magnetic smile is subtle, soft, and intentional. It's never forced or exaggerated. It doesn't seek attention, it offers presence. It begins with the eyes, those small crinkles at the corners that tell the brain, this is real. Psychologists call this a Duchenne smile, and it's one of the clearest nonverbal signals of sincerity we can send. Timing also plays a role. Smile when someone makes a point that resonates. Smile when they're sharing something joyful. Smile when the moment feels naturally quiet and connected. These smiles feel earned, not automatic. They create emotional punctuation marks, small exclamation points of connection. What makes this technique so powerful is how easy it is to underestimate. Most people think of a smile as background noise in a conversation, but used well, it becomes a spotlight. It draws attention without demanding it. It invites curiosity, and it can shift the entire energy of an interaction without a single word spoken. There's also the smile in silence, the kind you offer after eye contact or at the end of a meaningful sentence. A slow, knowing smile that doesn't require a response. This kind of smile leaves an impression. It creates tension, not discomfort, but anticipation. It suggests there's more beneath the surface, and that mystery is magnetic. Another variation is the delayed smile. You make eye contact, wait a beat, and then let the smile appear slowly. That delay creates a moment of tension and surprise, and that combination catches people off guard in the best way. It makes the smile feel personal, even intimate. You don't need to smile constantly. That would lose its power. Instead, think of it like seasoning, used sparingly but with precision. A single, meaningful smile in the right moment is more powerful than a dozen scattered ones. It says, I'm here with you, I'm enjoying this, and that message doesn't need to be loud to be felt. What makes your smile unforgettable isn't its size, it's its honesty. When someone feels that your smile is meant only for them, even for just a moment, it creates a flash of connection that often gets replayed in their mind long after you're gone. Because once someone associates your presence with that kind of warmth, comfort, and charm, they begin to crave more of it, even if they can't quite explain why. And when that craving starts to settle beneath the surface, the next step unfolds naturally. A quiet reflection of their own body, their own energy, their own emotional rhythm, all mirrored back to them without a single word spoken. Mirroring without being obvious. There's a silent language that builds connection faster than words ever could, a language of posture, gestures, rhythm, and tone. It's called mirroring. And when done subtly and sincerely, it creates an emotional resonance that makes the other person feel, almost instinctively, we're alike, we're in sync, I feel safe here. That sense of belonging is one of the most potent forces in attraction. Mirroring is something we naturally do when we're with people we like. We unconsciously match their pace, sit the way they sit, use similar hand gestures, even mimic their tone or laugh. It's a sign of rapport. But when you learn to use mirroring with gentle awareness, it becomes a powerful way to deepen emotional closeness. The secret lies in subtlety. If someone feels like you're copying them, the effect vanishes. It becomes awkward, even uncomfortable. But if your mirroring is soft, delayed by a few seconds, filtered through your own personality, it works like magic. They feel seen, understood, and comfortable without knowing why. Start by observing their energy. Are they calm and grounded, or animated and expressive? Is their speech fast or slow? Do they use their hands when they speak? You don't need to mirror everything, just enough to align with their emotional frequency. For example, if they lean forward while talking about something meaningful, mirror that lean after a moment. If they cross their arms in thought, slowly do the same. Pacing and tone are powerful too. If they speak softly and reflectively, meet that softness. If their rhythm speeds up when they get excited, match it with your own voice. It's not mimicry, it's resonance. Like tuning in to the same radio frequency. They'll feel it, even if they can't explain it. Mirroring also works emotionally. If they're sharing something vulnerable, match their openness with a soft expression and a slower pace. If they're joking and playful, loosen up with them. This emotional syncing shows them that they don't need to manage your reaction. They can simply be, and you'll meet them there. You can also use touch subtly and appropriately. If they brush your arm lightly during a moment of laughter and you later do the same in a different context, it can create a subconscious link of trust and safety. But only when mutual comfort and respect are already present. There's also a next-level technique called leading. Once you've gently mirrored someone for a while, try shifting your posture or energy slightly and see if they follow. If they do, even in small ways, it's a strong signal that rapport has been established. But never forget, mirroring is not about control. It's about connection. It's about making the other person feel emotionally aligned without even needing to say so. The goal is to create a space where they feel, I can relax here. I don't need to pretend. This feels easy. People are drawn to those who reflect them, not to flatter, but to connect. When someone feels like they're emotionally dancing in rhythm with you, they begin to lower their guard. They feel close without knowing why. And once that rhythm has settled into the space between you, a small spark of recognition begins to grow. An invitation to explore what lies beneath the surface, perhaps through a few carefully chosen words that touch more than just the ego. Strategic compliments that go deeper. Most people are used to hearing compliments that skim the surface. You look nice today. That color suits you. You have a great smile. While these words are kind, they rarely create a lasting impression. They're expected, rehearsed. But a truly effective compliment, the kind that lingers in someone's mind long after the conversation ends, reaches much deeper. It's thoughtful, personal, and rooted in genuine observation. The magic of a deep compliment lies in its specificity. Instead of praising what someone already hears all the time, point out something less obvious. Maybe it's how they calm a room without speaking, how their curiosity leads them to ask meaningful questions, how their laugh makes others feel at ease. These are things they may not even realize about themselves, and that's why it matters. When you point out something subtle and sincere, the impact is far greater. It tells the person, I really see you. And to feel truly seen, even for a brief moment, creates a powerful emotional imprint. Another layer of this technique is timing. Don't flood someone with praise right away. Let the moment build. Offer a compliment when it feels natural, after a meaningful exchange, during a quiet pause, or in response to something they shared. These well-placed words feel more like a gift than a performance. You can also compliment the way they make you feel. I feel calm around you. You have a way of making conversations feel effortless. I always leave our talks with something new to think about. These statements aren't just about them, they're about your experience of them, and that feels real. Strategic compliments also work best when they're delivered without expectation. You're not trying to impress. You're not fishing for a return compliment. You're simply offering appreciation because you saw something worth naming. That kind of selfless validation stands out. Tone matters too. A deep compliment delivered with sincerity, a softer voice, a slight pause before speaking, feels different. It doesn't sound rehearsed. It lands with quiet intensity, and that's where it becomes memorable. You can even layer in a little surprise. Compliment something they've shared about their inner world, their resilience, their way of handling challenges, their passion for something that matters to them. When your words connect to something emotional or meaningful, they take root. It's also worth remembering that too many compliments, even sincere ones, can begin to lose their power. That's why strategic use is so important. You want each one to feel earned, like it comes from a moment of awareness, not from a script. Over time, the person begins to associate you with insight, with someone who doesn't just skim the surface, but who actually pays attention. And that awareness feels rare, safe, special. Because when someone feels deeply seen by you, they begin to wonder what else you notice, what other truths you might reflect back to them. And that curiosity opens the door to something even more playful and intimate. Creating inside jokes. Laughter can create intimacy in seconds, and nothing builds a sense of closeness faster than sharing a moment that only the two of you understand. Inside jokes are powerful because they signal that something special has happened. Something small, perhaps, but unique to your connection. In a world where most conversations follow the same script, an inside joke says, "This is ours. No one else gets it." You don't need to be a comedian to create them. In fact, the best inside jokes aren't crafted, they emerge. Maybe it's a funny mispronunciation, a shared observation about something ridiculous in your environment, or a quirky phrase one of you keeps using. What matters isn't the joke itself, but the shared experience that gave birth to it. These little jokes become more than funny moments. They become anchors. Every time you reference them, you're reinforcing the emotional connection that was formed in that earlier moment. You're saying, "Remember that time we laughed about this? We're still in sync." And that creates a quiet bond that deepens over time. Inside jokes also soften vulnerability. When someone can joke with you, they feel safe. They feel relaxed. Playfulness is an underrated form of emotional safety, especially in relationships. When someone associates you with laughter and ease, they begin to seek your presence without fully understanding why. Creating these moments requires presence. You have to notice the little weird things, the timing, the facial expression, the unexpected response. And you have to be willing to play. Point it out gently, name it, laugh together, and then casually bring it up again later. That repetition turns a moment into a memory. You can also escalate the intimacy by building on the joke. Give it a nickname, turn it into a fake rule or playful reminder. Add layers to it. The more depth you give it, the more meaningful and personal it becomes. Over time, it begins to feel like a secret language between the two of you. And when something difficult or heavy happens, those inside jokes serve as bridges back to lightness. A small callback to a silly moment can ease tension, bring a smile, and remind them that even when things are serious, there's still room for levity. That contrast creates balance. It tells them that you're not just someone who goes deep, you're someone who can keep it light too. The beauty of inside jokes is that they don't require planning or perfect timing. They just need awareness, curiosity, willingness to be a little silly. And when both people contribute to the creation of that moment, it becomes emotionally charged in the best way. Over time, these jokes become emotional shortcuts. A single word or look can bring back a flood of laughter and connection. And in a crowded world, being the one person who shares that tiny universe with them can be incredibly attractive. Because once you've made someone laugh in a way that feels personal and unforced, the next time they smile without you, they just might wish you were there. And in the space between laughter and silence, something softer begins to stir. A moment where words fall away and presence takes on a life of its own. Using silence to build tension. Most people rush to fill silence, fearing it signals disconnection, awkwardness, or loss of control. But when used with awareness and intention, silence becomes one of the most potent tools for building emotional tension, intimacy, and magnetism. In fact, it's often in the quiet moments, those pauses between words, where the real connection starts to form. Silence gives weight to your presence. It says, "I'm not afraid to just be here with you." It invites the other person to feel rather than think, to sense rather than analyze. When you're comfortable in silence, you signal emotional stability. You're not scrambling for approval or performance. You're simply grounded, and that confidence is deeply attractive. Imagine this. You're having a moment of eye contact, and instead of quickly speaking, you let it linger. Just a second longer than expected. In that pause, electricity forms. A question arises. What are they thinking? Why aren't they speaking yet? That curiosity builds tension, not anxiety, but anticipation. It sharpens awareness. It makes the moment feel alive. There are many kinds of silence, and each has a different emotional flavor. There's the reflective silence after someone shares something personal. The playful silence following a shared laugh. The heavy silence when words feel unnecessary. When you learn to sit inside these silences with comfort and intention, you create emotional depth without needing to say a thing. You can also pair silence with a gentle smile, a soft gaze, or a slight tilt of your head. These subtle gestures communicate openness, warmth, and curiosity, all without words. When done skillfully, the silence becomes more expressive than speaking. It leaves space for the other person to come closer, to lean in, to wonder what might come next. Silence also allows someone else to expand. Most people only reveal their deeper thoughts when given space. If you ask a meaningful question and then wait, not just a second or two, but truly wait, you give them permission to go deeper. You're showing them that you're not here to hurry them, that you can hold their truth without flinching. There's also something deeply sensual about silence. In the right context, it creates emotional heat. A look held a little longer, a breath shared without interruption, a pause between reaching for a glass or brushing hands. These unscripted, quiet moments often carry more emotional charge than any spoken line. And when silence follows a compliment or a meaningful observation, it amplifies the emotional impact. Instead of rushing to say more, let your words echo, let them land. Let the other person sit with what was just shared. That kind of restraint shows emotional maturity, and it makes your presence unforgettable. Silence is also where self-awareness lives. When you're not speaking, you're noticing their eyes, their gestures, their mood. You become more attuned, more responsive to nuance. And the more aware you are, the more personal your connection becomes. Ultimately, silence invites trust. It says, I don't need to fill every moment. I trust the space between us. And when someone feels that kind of ease with you, they begin to open in ways that surprise even themselves. Because once the noise fades and your stillness becomes its own kind of communication, the voice that breaks the silence next carries much more weight, especially when it's colored with warmth, subtle variation, and emotional presence. Playing with voice tone. Your voice is more than just a way to speak words. It's an emotional instrument. It carries texture, rhythm, weight, and mood. Most people don't realize how much their voice communicates, even when their words are simple. The tone you use can instantly shift the emotional temperature in a conversation. It can comfort, excite, intrigue, or calm. It can draw someone in closer or push them away. The tone of your voice tells people how to feel about what you're saying. A soft, low voice signals safety and intimacy. A playful lilt suggests humor or curiosity. A slower pace invites depth, while subtle shifts in volume or rhythm can create emotional waves. When you learn to play with your voice the way a musician plays with sound, you unlock a powerful tool for connection and attraction. Start by becoming aware of your baseline tone. Do you speak quickly or slowly? Is your voice sharp, flat, or melodic? Do you tend to speak from your throat or from your chest? These patterns can change how people feel in your presence, often without them realizing it. To build emotional connection, practice lowering your tone slightly, especially when speaking in more personal or vulnerable moments. A deeper, slower voice tends to relax others. It suggests composure, confidence, and care. It doesn't demand attention, it invites it. And that invitation feels safer and more attractive than force. You can also soften your volume to draw someone closer. When you speak just a little quieter, people instinctively lean in. They become more attentive. It creates a sense of intimacy, like the conversation is meant only for them. Whispering isn't necessary. Just softening your tone sends the same message with more subtlety. Another powerful technique is pacing. Slowing down your speech, especially after asking a meaningful question or making an observation, adds weight. It gives the listener time to absorb what was said. It shows that you're not rushing, that you're comfortable in the pause. And comfort is contagious. You can also vary your tone to reflect emotion. Let your voice rise when sharing excitement or amusement. Let it fall when expressing sincerity or care. Don't be afraid of silence. Don't fear the breath between words. Use it. Let it create rhythm, tension, or softness. And remember, tone isn't just about how you speak, it's about how you listen. Responding with a thoughtful or a quiet I get that, spoken slowly and gently, can carry more empathy than a full sentence. It's your way of saying, I'm with you, not just through words, but through presence. When your voice begins to match the emotional tone of the moment, when it mirrors the other person's energy or gently shifts it, you create resonance. You stop being just another voice in the background and become an emotional guide. Someone they feel safe with, someone they want to hear more from. Over time, the sound of your voice becomes familiar, soothing, memorable, and long after the words are forgotten, the feeling your tone created will stay. Because when someone begins to associate your voice with comfort, attention, or quiet excitement, they begin to crave it, not for what it says, but for how it makes them feel. And once that feeling is established, the next step is no longer about speaking. It's about making the other person feel deeply understood, without needing to say much at all. Making them feel understood. There are few feelings more powerful than the sensation of being truly understood. Not simply listened to or agreed with, but deeply seen, emotionally recognized without needing to explain yourself. When you make someone feel understood, you offer them something rare, the sense that their inner world has been received without judgment. And that feeling can create an instant emotional bond. Understanding someone begins with full presence. That means putting aside the urge to interrupt, solve, or redirect the conversation. Instead, it's about being with them, in their moment, completely. You listen not only to their words, but to their tone, their pauses, their choice of language. These subtle cues tell you just as much as what's being said. When someone shares something important, don't rush to respond with your own story or opinion. Pause. Then reflect what you've heard, especially the emotion behind it. Say things like, "It sounds like that really hurt," or "You must have felt incredibly proud." These kinds of statements are like mirrors. They show the other person that you didn't just hear their story, you felt it with them. This kind of emotional reflection tells someone that they don't have to fight to be understood, that they can speak freely without needing to justify themselves. And when people feel that, their guard lowers. They begin to open more. Trust forms, not because you said something perfect, but because your presence made them feel safe. Being understood also means remembering. If someone tells you about something meaningful, an upcoming event, a childhood memory, a recurring struggle, bring it up later. Ask how it went. Refer back to it when it's relevant. These moments prove that you cared enough to hold on to what they shared, that their experiences didn't just pass through you, they stayed. There's also power in recognizing what someone isn't saying. Maybe they avoid a topic, or they speak lightly about something that feels heavy. If you gently ask, "Is there more to that?" or "Do you want to talk about it?" you show that you're tuned in, that you're not afraid of their complexity. And that willingness to hold space for the unspoken builds deeper intimacy. Importantly, making someone feel understood doesn't require you to agree with them. It means validating their feelings, even if their perspective is different from yours. Saying, "I can see how you'd feel that way," or "That makes sense given what you've been through," shows empathy without sacrificing authenticity. Over time, people remember how you made them feel far more than what you said. And when they recall the moments when they felt most themselves, most accepted, most emotionally clear, those moments often involve someone who made them feel understood. And here's the quiet truth. The more someone feels emotionally seen by you, the more they begin to crave your presence. Not for your attention, but for the rare comfort of being allowed to just be. Because when that feeling settles in, the feeling of emotional safety, of being reflected without distortion, something even more powerful begins to rise. A desire not just to talk, but to confide, to share something personal, something that doesn't belong to anyone else. The shared secrets connection. There comes a point in every growing connection where things shift. The energy changes. The words slow down. The conversation starts to dip beneath the surface. Often, this transition is sparked by something simple yet powerful: the sharing of a personal detail, a hidden memory, or a small truth no one else knows, a secret. And when that moment is handled with care, it can become one of the most emotionally bonding experiences between two people. The kind of secret we're talking about here isn't necessarily dramatic. It might be a silly fear from childhood, a weird dream, a hidden hobby, or a moment of embarrassment they rarely admit. It could also be something deeper, an insecurity, a longing, a belief they rarely express. What matters is that it's personal, and that they chose to share it with you. Secrets create emotional intimacy because they carry vulnerability. When someone shares a piece of their private world, they're saying, "I trust you with this." And if you receive it with warmth, curiosity, and respect, you send the message back, "You're safe here." That exchange becomes a foundation for emotional closeness that simple conversation could never build. One of the best ways to invite this kind of exchange is by going first. Share something real, not overly dramatic, but honest. Maybe something about your past that shaped you, a quirky fear, a personal challenge. When you take the lead with a gentle truth, you open the door for the other person to step through it too. The moment a secret is shared and received well, it becomes something sacred. It forms what psychologists sometimes call a dyadic bubble, a space that exists only between the two of you, a world that feels separate from the noise around you. Every time you reference that shared secret later, even subtly, you reinforce the connection. It says, "We've been somewhere together emotionally. We have something no one else does." This doesn't mean prying or pushing. The best secrets are offered, not extracted. Pay attention to emotional openings. When someone hesitates before speaking, changes their tone, or says, "I don't usually talk about this," you're at a threshold moment. How you respond matters. Stay soft. Stay still. Let them finish. Don't interrupt. Don't analyze. Just be present. Your reaction is everything. If they sense judgment or disinterest, the door closes. But if they feel acceptance, if your eyes hold theirs, if your voice stays calm and steady, they'll associate you with emotional safety. And that's something most people are searching for without even realizing it. The power of a shared secret grows over time. It becomes a reference point, a quiet bond. Even in group settings or public spaces, a glance or phrase that recalls that moment can instantly draw you back into closeness. It becomes a silent language between just the two of you. And when more than one secret is shared over time, the emotional gravity intensifies. It's not just attraction anymore, it's alliance. You're no longer someone they're getting to know. You're someone they feel tethered to in a deeper, more private way. Because once a secret is exchanged and held with care, something awakens. A sense of trust, a sense of we. And in that space, the connection stops feeling like possibility and starts feeling like something real. And as that sense of realness settles in, the next step becomes not just emotional, but transformational. A moment where mutual vulnerability opens the door to a powerful and lasting sense of trust. Vulnerability as a weapon of trust. We live in a world that often praises strength, composure, and certainty. But in the quiet world of human connection, there is another kind of power, one far more rare and magnetic: vulnerability. Not weakness, not emotional instability, but the boldness of showing up as your unfiltered self. The courage to say, "This is me," without the mask. Vulnerability builds trust faster than almost anything else. Why? Because it breaks the script. Most people spend their days managing impressions, protecting their stories, avoiding judgment. When you're willing to be open, gently, honestly, you signal to the other person that they can lower their guard too. That this moment, this connection, is different. You don't need to spill your deepest secrets right away. Vulnerability doesn't mean oversharing. It means revealing something true that you wouldn't tell just anyone. Maybe it's admitting a fear you're working through, a dream you haven't said out loud, a moment in your past that changed you. These truths are not weaknesses, they're gifts. And when offered with care, they create a bridge to emotional safety. The key is emotional timing. Vulnerability is powerful when it's invited, not forced. If the other person is opening up, it might be the right moment to offer something of your own. Don't try to match intensity or make it about you. Simply offer a piece of your truth and let it land. That shared softness builds intimacy in a way no perfectly rehearsed story ever could. Vulnerability also deepens when paired with presence. Look them in the eye when you speak. Let your voice slow down. Let your words feel unrushed. These subtle cues tell the other person that what you're sharing is real, that you're not just saying something rehearsed, you're revealing something felt. When you share vulnerably and it's met with kindness or understanding, trust grows exponentially. But even more interesting is what happens when you're the one receiving vulnerability. If someone confides in you, hold that space. Don't interrupt. Don't fix. Don't minimize. Just stay with them. Say something simple like, "Thank you for telling me that," or "I really appreciate you trusting me." That kind of emotional stillness stays in their memory. Over time, vulnerability becomes a language, a way of saying, "You're safe here. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be real." That invitation can be life-changing, especially for someone who spent years being careful about what they reveal. People remember how you made them feel in their most uncertain moments. If you made them feel supported while they were being real, they begin to associate you with emotional freedom. And in a world where most people are holding their breath, that kind of presence becomes addictive. Eventually, vulnerability becomes the glue of deeper emotional connection. It transforms you from a passing presence into someone whose memory lives in their nervous system. Someone they trust, long for, and feel tethered to. Not because you were perfect, but because you were brave enough to be real. And once that kind of emotional gravity takes hold, the foundation is laid for something even more vivid. A moment from the past, a memory shared that roots your connection in time and meaning. The first memory technique. Every deep connection begins somewhere. A moment, a feeling, a memory that becomes the emotional starting point between two people. The power of that first shared moment cannot be overstated. It sets the tone, the energy, the emotional color of how the other person remembers you. That's why creating a meaningful first memory is a strategy that goes far beyond conversation. It's about crafting experience. This doesn't mean you need to plan something elaborate or performative. On the contrary, the most powerful first memories often come from small, genuine moments, ones that feel unrepeatable. It could be a strange coincidence, a surprisingly deep conversation, an unexpected burst of laughter, or a small act of kindness that felt intimate and unscripted. What matters is that it feels different from their usual interactions. The goal is to create an emotional imprint, something that sticks, something that, when they think about you later, brings back a specific feeling. You want them to recall not just what you said or did, but how they felt in your presence: safe, seen, intrigued, alive. To do this, slow down. Pay attention to details. If you're walking together, notice something beautiful or strange and point it out. Ask an unusual question, not just "what do you do?" but "what would you love to try if no one could see you fail?" Questions like these shift the tone of conversation instantly. They invite honesty, imagination, and emotion. Another way to create a first memory is by offering a spontaneous gesture, something that feels out of the ordinary. Maybe it's offering to walk with them a little longer, buying them something simple that reminds you of the conversation, or telling them something vulnerable that you wouldn't normally share with someone new. These moments don't need to be dramatic, they just need to feel real. Shared experiences also anchor memories. Doing something slightly out of routine, a late-night walk, finding a quiet place to talk, watching something unexpected happen in your surroundings and reacting together. These co-created moments feel less like small talk and more like life. It's also worth considering how the moment ends. The last impression is just as powerful as the first. Don't rush it. Let there be space, a pause, a warm smile, a subtle glance. These tiny details give weight to the goodbye. They make the other person carry your presence with them a little longer. And if, in that moment, you can say something personal and true, something like, "This was different, I didn't expect this, and I'm really glad it happened," then that moment becomes more than memory. It becomes meaning. People crave connection that feels cinematic, even if they don't say it out loud. We all want stories worth remembering. When you become the main character in one of those stories, even briefly, your presence becomes unforgettable. Because once a meaningful first memory is formed, every interaction that follows echoes with that emotional imprint, and the connection begins to grow not just forward in time, but backward, rooting itself in something that already feels special. And from that rooted place, the connection is ready to deepen, not just through memory, but through the repetition of emotional patterns that create a sense of comfort, safety, and longing. Emotional anchoring. Emotional anchoring is one of the most subtle yet powerful techniques in creating deep connection. It's the ability to link your presence to a specific feeling, so that every time someone experiences that emotion, they think of you. It's not manipulation, it's memory. It's how the brain naturally forms associations. And when you understand how to use it intentionally, you can become someone they instinctively seek when that emotion returns. Think of a song that instantly takes you back to a specific moment, or a scent that reminds you of someone you used to know. Those associations happen because your brain pairs feelings with triggers. Emotional anchoring works the same way. If someone consistently feels joy, calm, inspiration, or safety around you, their nervous system begins to attach that emotion to you. The key is consistency. It doesn't require intensity. You don't need to create grand gestures or dramatic scenes. You simply need to offer a specific emotional energy, reliably and sincerely. Maybe that's a calm presence when everything else feels chaotic. Maybe it's humor in unexpected moments. Maybe it's quiet confidence. The emotion you provide becomes your signature. Start by noticing what they seem to crave. Do they relax when you speak slowly and calmly? Do they light up when you joke? Do they lean in when you get reflective? These are clues. Once you notice what lands, reinforce it. Let your presence become a pattern. Repetition matters. If someone consistently feels peace in your presence, even for short moments, that experience imprints. Over time, they won't just enjoy being with you, they'll feel like they need it, like you're the emotional balance to their stress, the clarity to their noise, the warmth to their uncertainty. You can amplify anchoring through environmental cues, music, locations, objects, or even time of day. If you always talk during quiet walks or under city lights or while a specific song plays, those elements become part of the emotional memory. Later, those same triggers can bring you back to their mind even if you're not there. Anchoring also works through reflection. After a powerful moment, revisit it. That conversation stayed with me. Or, I keep thinking about how real that felt. Naming the emotion reinforces the experience. It tells the brain, this mattered. And the more meaningful a moment feels, the deeper the anchor goes. It's important to be sincere. Anchoring is not about control, it's about connection. You're not trying to make someone dependent. You're creating a space they return to because it feels good, familiar, grounding. And that kind of emotional familiarity becomes more valuable than novelty. One of the most powerful aspects of emotional anchoring is how unconscious it becomes. The other person might not even realize why they suddenly want to call you, or why your voice calms them, or why a memory of your time together pops up when they feel lost. But their body remembers, their emotions remember, and that's where your presence begins to live, beneath the surface, where real attachment grows. Because once someone begins to associate you with a specific emotional relief or inspiration, they begin to crave you not out of want, but out of need. Not because you complete them, but because you reflect something they want to feel more of. And when that desire is established, the next step is no longer about energy or emotion. It's about making them feel truly cherished, valued, and deeply special when they're around you. Making them feel special around you. In a world filled with distractions, comparisons, and surface-level exchanges, one of the most magnetic things you can do is make someone feel truly special. Not flattered, not admired, but deeply, unmistakably valued. When someone feels that they're not just another person in the room, but the person, you create an emotional shift that leaves a lasting mark. This feeling doesn't come from grand gestures or constant praise. It comes from attention, from presence, from noticing the things no one else seems to see. When you observe the way someone thinks, the quirks they try to hide, or the effort they put into things that usually go unnoticed, and then gently name those things, you make them feel seen. And to feel seen is to feel significant. Start by slowing down. When they speak, really listen. Not just to the words, but to what's behind them. Ask thoughtful questions. Remember small details. Bring those details up later. You mentioned you used to paint. Have you done anything creative lately? That simple follow-up tells them you didn't just hear them, you held on to something they shared. Another way to make someone feel special is to create small, exclusive moments. Maybe it's a phrase that only you two use, a private joke, a ritual, even if it's as small as a certain way you greet them. These things act like bookmarks in the story of your connection. They say, "This isn't just general, this is ours." You can also make someone feel special by reflecting back their impact on you. "I always feel calmer after we talk. You challenge me to think differently." These statements turn admiration into relationship. They show that the connection has changed you in some way, that it's alive and evolving. One of the most overlooked tools here is sincere compliments on internal traits. People are used to hearing about how they look, what they wear. But when you say, "You have this way of making people feel safe," or "I love how your mind works when you're passionate about something," you elevate the conversation. You show that you're tuned in to who they are, not just how they present. Making someone feel special also involves exclusivity, not in a possessive way, but in a chosen way. Letting them know that you see something in them that others might miss, that their presence isn't just pleasant, it's meaningful to you, that you don't feel this way with just anyone. You don't have to be overly expressive, even your energy can carry the message. The way you pause to take them in, the softness in your gaze, the calm in your voice when they enter the space. These non-verbal cues say more than compliments ever could. And when they begin to associate your presence with that feeling of being valued, noticed, and emotionally uplifted, they'll begin to seek it out again and again. Not because they need your validation, but because they feel more like themselves around you. Because once someone feels genuinely special in your company, they begin to imagine more moments together. And in that imagined future, you don't just exist, you matter. And from that place of significance, the connection naturally deepens into something even richer. Shared experiences that turn into stories, and stories that quietly bind two lives into one unfolding narrative. Shared adventures and micro-adventures. You don't need plane tickets or elaborate plans to create unforgettable experiences with someone. In fact, it's often the small, spontaneous moments, the micro-adventures, that linger the longest in memory. These are the unplanned walks, the late-night drives, the unexpected detours that spark laughter, curiosity, or reflection. They may seem ordinary from the outside, but emotionally, they create a powerful sense of us. Shared adventures bond people because they require co-creation. You're not just talking, you're doing something together, making decisions together, reacting to the unknown together. That sense of teamwork, however subtle, activates trust, closeness, and a shared rhythm. It turns two people into partners, even if just for a little while. You can spark a micro-adventure with a simple invitation. Let's take a different route. Want to try something weird? Let's walk without a destination. These prompts break the routine and invite the other person into a moment that's unscripted. The unpredictability adds excitement, and the co-navigation adds connection. Even something as small as getting caught in the rain or discovering a quirky cafe can become a memory that glues you together emotionally. What matters is not the activity itself, but the shared experience of discovery. When both people are present, playful, and open, even the mundane becomes magic. Adventures also reveal parts of people that conversation alone can't reach. You see how they react to surprise, how they handle discomfort, how they find humor in awkwardness. These glimpses are valuable. They make the connection feel more real, more human. And when you respond with kindness, laughter, or curiosity, it tells them, "I enjoy you, not just in stillness, but in motion." You can amplify the emotional impact by naming the moment. This feels like a movie scene. We're totally going to laugh about this later. These comments mark the memory. They tell the brain this moment matters. And once marked, it's easier to return to. It becomes part of your shared story. Inside jokes often emerge during micro-adventures. Silly names for places, exaggerated retellings of tiny mishaps, or invented traditions. These aren't just funny, they're emotionally loaded. They create shorthand for your bond. Every time you recall them, the feelings return. And the more moments you collect, the richer the connection becomes. These shared stories also create emotional layering. When someone thinks of you, they don't just recall one interaction. They remember a series of experiences that feel dynamic and alive. That creates what psychologists call emotional momentum, a sense that the relationship is moving forward, evolving, deepening. You don't need to force adventure. You just need to stay open to it. Be willing to veer off course. Say yes a little more. Laugh when things go wrong. Invite the unexpected. That openness, when shared, becomes part of your chemistry. Over time, people fall in love not just with who you are, but with how they feel when they're with you. And nothing creates that feeling more powerfully than being part of something unrepeatable, something that belongs only to the two of you. Because once your connection is rooted in experience, not just conversation, it begins to take on a life of its own. And from that point forward, even the quietest moments start to echo with meaning. Echoing their values. At the core of every meaningful connection is a powerful, unspoken question. Do you see the world the way I do? When someone senses that your values, your principles, your beliefs, your way of moving through life resonate with theirs, a powerful bond begins to form. It's not just attraction anymore, it's alignment. Echoing someone's values doesn't mean pretending to be someone you're not. It means paying close attention to what matters to them and reflecting that back in a sincere, thoughtful way. People are constantly, often unconsciously, signaling what they care about. They do it in how they talk about others, what they admire, what frustrates them, and what lights them up. If you listen closely, their values rise to the surface. Maybe they speak passionately about fairness, or loyalty, or freedom. Maybe they emphasize personal growth, family, or creativity. Your job isn't to copy those values, but to recognize and validate them. Say things like, "I can see how much that matters to you," or "That's something I really respect about you." These simple affirmations create emotional reflection, showing them that you see what drives them. Even more powerful is when you naturally express a value they hold dear without needing to announce it. For example, if they value kindness and you treat a stranger with unexpected grace, that moment doesn't need a spotlight. It speaks for itself. And when they witness your actions aligning with their beliefs, a deep internal shift happens. They feel safe, they feel inspired, they feel seen. This alignment builds what psychologists call value congruence, and it's one of the strongest predictors of lasting emotional connection. It signals that the two of you are not just compatible in personality, but in purpose. You can also deepen this bond by sharing your own values gently through stories, decisions, or questions. Don't lecture. Let it emerge naturally. For example, if you value resilience, share a story about bouncing back from something tough. If you value curiosity, talk about something strange you recently learned. These glimpses allow them to see who you are beneath the surface, And if your values echo theirs, the emotional resonance grows. It's also powerful to validate shared values through experience. If you both care about mindfulness, suggest a walk without phones. If you both love creativity, explore a quirky art space together. These aren't just activities, they're expressions of alignment. They say, we don't just talk the same language, we live it. Remember, values aren't just ideas, they're emotional anchors. When someone sees their core beliefs reflected in you, they begin to feel that being around you brings them closer to who they want to be. And that sensation creates a kind of emotional gravity that's hard to ignore. Over time, they may not be able to explain exactly why they feel drawn to you, but it will live in the way they relax around you, the trust in their eyes, and the quiet confidence that being with you feels like home. And once that sense of alignment is established, the connection is ready to deepen even further, not just through values, but through the language of touch, presence, and nonverbal emotional safety. The art of non-sexual touch. Touch is one of the most primal languages we speak, older than words, deeper than logic. And when used with care and intention, it can communicate safety, presence, and affection in a way that bypasses the mind and speaks directly to the nervous system. Non-sexual touch, in particular, is often overlooked in attraction, yet it is one of the most effective ways to build emotional closeness without pressure or confusion. This kind of touch doesn't aim to escalate or seduce. It aims to connect. It says, I see you, I'm here with you. It invites comfort. It creates a sense of shared space. And when offered sincerely, it allows the other person's body to relax in your presence, something that's both rare and magnetic. The key to this type of touch is subtlety. It's the light touch on the arm when laughing, the brief, reassuring hand on their back when walking through a crowd, the shared warmth of a high five that lingers for just a second longer than usual. These moments, when timed well and grounded in authenticity, are incredibly powerful. But here's the nuance. It has to be welcome. The most important part of non-sexual touch is reading cues, verbal and nonverbal. Are they leaning in or pulling back? Do they mirror your touch or freeze slightly? Their responses tell you everything. The goal isn't to assert, but to offer. And when touch is offered gently and received with comfort, it becomes a silent affirmation of trust. It's also about context. In a moment of celebration, a quick shoulder squeeze says, I'm proud of you. During a vulnerable conversation, a hand on the forearm says, I'm here. These simple gestures, when aligned with emotion, deepen the connection. They add texture to the experience of being with you, making the interaction feel more human, more real. Another benefit of non-sexual touch is that it creates a gradual physical familiarity. It helps both of you get used to each other's presence without jumping into intensity. This slow build is often more powerful than any bold move. It communicates patience, emotional maturity, and self-awareness. Interestingly, non-sexual touch also allows the other person to miss you. When they reflect on your time together, they may not remember every word, but they will remember how it felt to be near you. The warmth, the calm, the quiet affirmation that they were safe, valued, and physically acknowledged without demand. You can also reinforce these moments later. A simple comment like, I like how comfortable it feels when we're close, or that moment earlier felt really natural, helps the emotional memory settle in. It invites the other person to feel the same comfort without pressure. Touch isn't just about skin, it's about energy, about timing. When your touch is slow, respectful, and rooted in genuine care, it becomes a subtle language of affection that most people are starved for. Because once someone's body learns to relax around you, their heart often follows. And that shift, that emotional softening, becomes the foundation for something even deeper, a sense of belonging, of emotional safety, of coming home without words. And from that embodied trust, a new door opens, where you become not just someone they enjoy, but someone they turn to in their quietest, most uncertain moments. Becoming their safe space. There is no greater emotional magnet than the feeling of safety. Not physical safety alone, but emotional safety. The kind that lets someone exhale in your presence, knowing they won't be judged, rushed, or misunderstood. When you become someone's safe space, the bond between you stops being about attraction and becomes something deeper, refuge. Most people carry around silent armor. They hide parts of themselves, manage their words carefully, and brace for misunderstanding. In that state, connection is limited. But when someone senses that they can be fully themselves around you, messy, excited, uncertain, vulnerable, they begin to relax. And in that relaxation, attachment grows. Creating that kind of space isn't about fixing their problems or having all the answers. It's about how you hold them, verbally and emotionally. It starts with your energy. Speak slowly. Leave pauses. Let them finish their thoughts without interruption. When someone shares something tender or unsure, don't rush to respond. Let your silence say, "I'm with you. Take your time." Validate what they feel, not necessarily by agreeing, but by acknowledging. "That makes sense," or "I can see why that would feel heavy." These small phrases tell the nervous system, you're not alone, you're not strange, you're allowed to feel this way here. You also become a safe space by being emotionally consistent. Be the same person on Tuesday that you were on Sunday. Don't punish honesty. Don't make them guess your mood. When your emotional weather is stable, people trust that they won't be blindsided. And in a world full of emotional volatility, that kind of steadiness becomes magnetic. It's not about being perfect. In fact, your own emotional honesty helps too. If you're tired, say so. If you're off, explain it gently. This kind of transparency creates mutual safety. It shows that you don't wear a mask either, that you're also real, human, and emotionally trustworthy. Boundaries are part of this space too. Being safe doesn't mean being available 24/7 or absorbing everything without limits. In fact, when you set clear, kind boundaries, you show that you can hold space without collapsing. That emotional strength is part of what makes you safe. Over time, this safety becomes something they return to. When they're overwhelmed, they'll think of you. When something beautiful happens, they'll want to share it with you. You become their emotional home base, not because you did something flashy, but because you consistently made them feel held. People don't always remember the specifics of what was said, but they always remember how they felt with you. If they felt calm, accepted, and emotionally nourished, they will crave that space again and again, not just because it feels good, but because it feels rare. And once you become someone's safe space, you stop being optional. You become a necessity, the quiet center in the storm, the voice that soothes, the presence that doesn't demand performance. You become their ground. And from that grounded place, something subtle but powerful can emerge, a spark of healthy emotional tension, an expression of care that hints at desire without tipping the balance too far. Showing selective jealousy. Jealousy is one of the most misunderstood emotional tools in the realm of connection. Too much of it creates tension, possessiveness, and insecurity. But when used with precision and care, selective jealousy can be a powerful spark, one that subtly communicates desire, value, and emotional investment without overwhelming the other person. It's not about control, it's about contrast. Selective jealousy isn't about watching someone like a hawk or commenting on everyone they interact with. It's about allowing a flicker of emotion to show, just enough to say, "You matter to me," or "I noticed that because I care." And when done with self-awareness and confidence, it can deepen attraction rather than diminish trust. The first key is authenticity. Don't manufacture jealousy just to provoke a reaction. People can sense when jealousy is artificial or strategic. Instead, allow it to surface naturally when something genuinely strikes a nerve. Maybe they mention an ex with a fond tone. Maybe someone else flirts with them in front of you. In those moments, a subtle shift in tone, a quiet pause, or a slightly more focused presence can say more than words ever could. The second key is restraint. You're not trying to punish, interrogate, or sulk. You're simply allowing a trace of vulnerability to surface. That hint of emotion makes you more real, more human. And when paired with calm composure, it says, "I'm not threatened, but I care." You might say something simple like, "I didn't love how that felt," or "I guess I didn't expect to feel a little protective." These statements aren't accusations. They're expressions of emotional investment. They let the other person know that your connection matters enough to move you, without trying to claim ownership of their actions. Selective jealousy can also surface through playful contrast. If they're talking about someone they admire, you might respond with a raised eyebrow and a smile, saying, "Careful, I might have to compete now." This kind of light banter acknowledges the feeling while keeping the tone warm. It adds a layer of flirtation without crossing into emotional drama. What makes selective jealousy attractive is that it signals depth. It shows that your interest isn't casual or indifferent. It reveals that behind your calm exterior, there's emotion. And where there's emotion, there's connection. But because it's measured, not volatile, it becomes a sign of passion, not insecurity. You also gain emotional credibility when you don't overuse it. If you're always cool and unbothered, the other person may question whether you care. If you're constantly reactive, they may feel smothered. But if you show your emotional cards only once in a while, just enough to make your care visible, it lands with impact. People want to feel chosen, not owned, not managed, but chosen, intentionally, emotionally, fully. Selective jealousy reminds them that you're not just enjoying the connection, you're invested in it. That you notice shifts in attention, because you value what's being built. And once that desire is acknowledged and mirrored back, a new dynamic starts to emerge. One where openness and mystery dance together, inviting curiosity while preserving intimacy. Mystery versus transparency balance. The tension between mystery and transparency is like the pull between magnetism and safety. Too much mystery, and the other person feels unsure or shut out. Too much transparency, and the intrigue fades. But when you balance both, revealing just enough to connect while holding back enough to remain intriguing, you create an emotional rhythm that keeps the connection alive and evolving. Mystery isn't about being distant or cryptic. It's about leaving space for the other person's imagination to roam. When they wonder about your thoughts, your past, your inner world, they become more engaged. Curiosity is emotional investment. It draws people closer, not just because they want to know more, but because they want to feel more. You can cultivate mystery by not oversharing right away. Let your stories unfold over time. Avoid dumping your entire life history in the first few conversations. Instead, drop hints, small details that suggest depth. Mention a powerful experience without explaining every part of it. Let your tone or expression imply meaning that words don't fully explain. At the same time, transparency builds trust. You need to show your emotional availability, your honesty, your willingness to be real. Share your opinions. Let your facial expressions reflect your thoughts. Offer sincere responses. These glimpses into your truth reassure the other person that you're not hiding. You're choosing what to reveal and when. The secret is pacing. Think of it as a dance. In one moment, you're letting them in. In the next, you're letting silence speak. You respond with warmth, but not always with full clarity. You show feeling, but not always full intention. This contrast is powerful. It creates emotional texture. It invites questions. People are most attracted not to perfection, but to depth. When they feel like there are layers to uncover, they stay engaged. But that depth has to be accessible. If you're too vague, they'll feel disconnected. If you're too exposed, they'll feel like they've seen everything too soon. The balance lives in being real while still leaving something unsaid. Body language plays a role here too. A lingering glance, a soft smile that doesn't explain itself, pauses between words. These physical cues hint at inner movement. They allow the other person to feel something is happening beneath the surface, even if they can't name it yet. One effective technique is to frame your transparency with subtle mystery. For example, "There's more to that story, but I'll save it for another time." Or, "That's something I've only recently started to understand." These phrases offer honesty while still inviting future connection. They create emotional bookmarks. You also become more magnetic when you let curiosity flow both ways. Ask questions that invite the other person's stories, but don't analyze every detail. Let them share on their own terms. Listen with quiet attention. Let silence stretch a little. That space becomes the canvas where connection takes root. Balancing mystery and transparency is not a trick. It's a skill, a form of emotional intelligence that makes the other person feel both comforted and curious. And when you master this rhythm, you stop being predictable. You become a presence they want to return to, again and again, because every moment with you feels both familiar and new. And from this delicate dance, a new phase begins. where your influence isn't just emotional or physical, but mental, subtly shaping how they think, what they anticipate, and how deeply they engage with your presence. Planting seeds through suggestion. Sometimes the most powerful influence doesn't come from direct expression, but from what's left unspoken. Those quiet cues that plant ideas in someone's mind without them realizing it. This is the art of suggestion, shaping the emotional landscape not by persuasion, but by subtle redirection. It's not manipulation, it's inspiration. And when done with care, it creates space for desire to grow naturally, almost invisibly. Suggestion works by inviting thought rather than forcing it. Instead of saying, "I want you to feel this," you might say, "Imagine if," or "Have you ever noticed how some connections feel different?" These kinds of phrases open doors in the mind. They don't push, they lead. To use suggestion effectively, start by understanding the other person's emotional rhythm. Are they curious, playful, reflective? Match that tone. If they're analytical, plant a thought with logic. If they're intuitive, frame your suggestion as a feeling. For example, "I don't know why, but it's easy to relax around you." That single sentence invites reflection. Why does it feel easy? What does that mean? You can also embed suggestions in storytelling. Share a moment from your past that mirrors something they might experience with you. "I once met someone who completely changed how I see certain things." You're not saying it's them, but the parallel is felt. The mind begins to connect dots. The emotion begins to transfer. Another method is to use contrast. Speak about what's missing in most connections. People rarely listen without trying to fix things. Or, it's rare to meet someone who's just present without needing anything. By highlighting the absence of something, you invite the listener to notice that presence in your dynamic. It creates an emotional vacuum, one that your presence begins to fill. Tone matters. Suggestive communication is slow, soft, and layered. It's not loud or declarative. It allows silence to do some of the work. A brief glance after a meaningful statement. A pause before shifting topics. These moments leave space for the other person's mind to wander, and often that's when the seed takes root. Importantly, suggestion is not about control. It's about invitation. You're not trying to engineer thoughts. You're creating an emotional environment where certain thoughts feel more likely to appear. That environment is built on trust, warmth, and genuine curiosity, not tactics or pressure. You can also suggest through shared possibilities. "I wonder what it would be like to travel with someone who's both adventurous and grounded." That sentence isn't about you, but it plants an image. And if you've demonstrated those traits already, the connection forms effortlessly. The real magic of suggestion is that it allows the other person to feel like the ideas were theirs. And when someone believes they arrived at a feeling or realization on their own, that emotion becomes more authentic and durable. It's not compliance, it's resonance. Over time, as these subtle cues accumulate, the person begins to associate certain emotions, thoughts, or desires with you. They may not even know why, but your presence lingers. And that emotional residue becomes the silent bridge that draws them back. And when once the mind begins to link your presence with meaning, possibility, or even a feeling of change, the heart often follows, not with fireworks, but with the quiet certainty that something new has taken root. And from there, you can begin to create moments of absence that gently intensify desire, not through force, but through carefully crafted space. Subtle scarcity, making yourself missable. One of the most misunderstood concepts in attraction is the idea of availability. People often believe that the more present they are, the more consistent, the more constantly visible, they will become indispensable. But the truth is more nuanced. Presence builds trust. Scarcity builds value. The art lies in balancing both in a way that makes your presence feel like a gift, not a given. Subtle scarcity doesn't mean disappearing or playing games. It's not about withholding affection or creating anxiety. Instead, it's about allowing just enough space for someone to feel your absence, and in that space, realize how much they've come to appreciate your presence. To cultivate subtle scarcity, you must first create meaningful moments. If there's no emotional impact when you're around, your absence won't matter. But if your time together is rich, full of laughter, comfort, insight, or calm, then even brief distance will create longing. Scarcity only works when it's preceded by emotional resonance. The technique is simple. Don't be constantly available. Let response times vary. Don't say yes to every invitation. Occasionally, let moments breathe without immediately filling them. Create pauses, small silences, the kind that make someone check their phone more than once. Not out of insecurity, but out of quiet desire. You can reinforce this subtly. Say things like, "I've been needing some quiet time lately," or "I value time alone to reset." These statements communicate emotional independence. They also set the stage for your occasional absence to feel natural rather than confusing. Another way to create missability is to end interactions while they're still emotionally elevated. Leave on a high note. Don't overstay conversations. Let moments close with a sense of "I want more" rather than "I've had enough." That emotional tension, left gently unresolved, creates internal echo. Also, be intentional about what you share. You don't need to broadcast every detail of your life. Hold some of your stories. Keep a few things just for yourself. When you do share, make it meaningful, something real, something reflective. That way, every interaction feels like a window rather than a wall. Subtle scarcity also means maintaining your own life, your own passions, your own priorities. When someone sees that you're fulfilled even when you're not with them, your presence becomes more valuable. You're not someone looking to be completed. You're someone offering wholeness. And wholeness is irresistible. Importantly, you should never use scarcity to manipulate. It's not about punishing, ghosting, or creating confusion. It's about emotional pacing, a gentle ebb and flow, a rhythm that keeps the connection dynamic instead of static. Predictability is comforting, but unpredictability is what keeps desire alive. When done well, subtle scarcity allows the other person to experience a quiet craving, a question that forms in their mind. When will I see them again? And when that next moment arrives, it feels heightened, more vivid, more emotionally charged. This technique turns your presence into a highlight rather than background noise. And when you're seen as the highlight, someone who brings energy, meaning, or calm, you become someone they actively look for, rather than passively tolerate. And once you've established that emotional rhythm, you can begin to strengthen the identity of your connection, not through space, but through shared meaning that reinforces the sense of us. Reinforcing shared identity. One of the most powerful forces in any relationship is the creation of a shared identity, an unspoken sense of us that goes beyond attraction or compatibility. When two people begin to see themselves as a unit, even in small, playful ways, a shift happens. The connection moves from interaction to alliance. It's no longer just two individuals enjoying each other. It becomes something deeper, something that feels like a partnership in the making. Reinforcing shared identity starts with language. Begin using subtle phrases like we, our thing, or people like us. These phrases, though simple, carry immense psychological weight. They send a signal to the subconscious. We are on the same team. For example, saying, "We're the type who always notice those little details," or "That's so our kind of humor," creates a microbond. It makes them feel included in a unique category that only the two of you share. Inside jokes are another powerful tool here. When something funny, awkward, or unusual happens, and you both acknowledge it with a look or a comment, it becomes a private moment. Recalling it later with a phrase like, "Remember our running joke about that coffee shop guy?" reinforces that your connection has its own culture, a private world. And people feel safest and most attached within shared emotional spaces. Shared identity is also built through rituals. They don't have to be grand or formal. Even something as simple as always walking a certain path, listening to the same playlist together, or ordering the same dish can become your thing. These small habits accumulate emotional meaning. They become threads in the fabric of your shared story. You can also create this sense of unity by expressing mutual values. If you both care about authenticity, say things like, "That's so us, cutting through the noise." Or if you both have a sarcastic sense of humor, lean into it with, "Only we would find that hilarious." Over time, these shared perspectives become emotional anchors. They reinforce the idea that what you have is unique, familiar, and rooted in something real. Importantly, shared identity doesn't mean losing individuality. It means offering someone a space where their individuality is seen and celebrated, but where it also contributes to something bigger, a we that enhances rather than erases the me. Storytelling helps here too. Talk about experiences from your past in a way that invites parallels. If you mention a trip that changed you, say, "I could see us having a similar moment someday." This soft forecast plants the seed of a shared future without pressure. It's less about commitment and more about emotional imagination. When done well, shared identity becomes a quiet emotional home. It's what makes someone think of you when they hear a song, visit a place, or experience something new. It's what makes the ordinary feel special, simply because it's shared. And as this identity strengthens, the bond deepens, not out of obligation, but because the experience of us becomes something they don't want to lose. And once that foundation is set, you can begin to reshape how moments of tension or confusion are processed, not as friction between two people, but as challenges to be reframed together. The Reattribution Trick. Attraction is not just about who someone is, it's about how you make them feel, and, more importantly, how they interpret those feelings. The reattribution trick is a subtle but powerful psychological technique that plays with this interpretation. It doesn't manipulate emotions, it redirects the way emotions are understood, helping someone associate positive feelings with you, even if those feelings were sparked by something else entirely. The core idea is simple. Humans often misattribute their emotional responses. If someone feels excited, safe, energized, or even nervous around you, their brain will look for an explanation. And if you're the person present in that moment, you often become the explanation. Their emotional state becomes linked to your presence. To use this naturally, you don't need to control their environment. You just need to guide their attention toward how they feel when they're around you. Ask reflective, gentle questions. Do you ever notice how some people just make you feel more at ease? Or, isn't it interesting how some connections just feel more alive? These kinds of questions invite the person to scan their emotions, and if those emotions are present while they're with you, the link forms. One effective strategy is to create shared experiences that evoke emotional arousal. Positive arousal, like laughter, surprise, inspiration, or deep thought. Watch a powerful movie together. Go somewhere with striking visuals. Try something slightly adventurous. The emotions stirred by those experiences will often get tied to the person you're with. That's you. You can also reframe your own presence subtly. Say something like, "I always feel more focused when I'm around you," or "Being with you makes everything feel more grounded." These statements model the behavior you want mirrored. When you point out how they affect you, they begin to consider how you affect them. And often, those reflections bring out emotions they hadn't fully named before. The reattribution trick works best when it's low pressure. You're not trying to convince anyone to feel something, you're simply helping them notice what's already there. Most people live so fast that they don't stop to process their emotions in real time. But when you guide them to slow down and reflect, their brain starts to connect dots, and you become part of the emotional map. Even tension or nervousness can be reattributed. If the energy between you is intense, instead of avoiding it, smile and say, "Is it just me, or does this feel kind of electric?" That playfully calls attention to the sensation without defining it as anxiety. It turns nerves into chemistry. This technique isn't about trickery, it's about awareness. You're helping someone tune into their feelings and giving those feelings a frame that includes you. When they look back on your time together, they'll remember not just the content of your conversation, but the emotional atmosphere you created. And that atmosphere becomes addictive. Because we don't fall in love with facts, we fall in love with how someone makes us feel: safe, seen, stimulated, inspired. When you consistently create those feelings and help them be noticed, you become the natural explanation for why everything suddenly feels different. And from that place of emotional resonance, you can begin to layer in other emotional states, like anticipation and delayed satisfaction, that further build intrigue and desire. Creating dopamine loops. Human connection is deeply tied to the chemistry of the brain, and one of the most powerful chemicals involved is dopamine, the neurotransmitter of anticipation, novelty, and reward. While many believe dopamine is released only during pleasure, the truth is it's often strongest in moments of expectation. That's the secret behind the dopamine loop, creating a pattern of interaction where emotional rewards are spaced out just enough to keep the other person mentally and emotionally engaged, craving more without feeling overwhelmed. To build a dopamine loop with someone, you must first understand that predictability can be comforting, but it's novelty that keeps things exciting. Think about how people get hooked on games, apps, or even cliffhanger TV shows. It's the combination of unpredictability and small, satisfying moments that keeps their attention locked in. You can do the same in emotional interactions. Start by alternating between presence and distance. Be fully engaged and connected during your time together, focused, warm, attentive. Then step away. Let the moment breathe. Don't immediately text back. Don't always be available. That small gap creates emotional anticipation. And when you return, re-engage with something meaningful, funny, or unexpectedly kind. The emotional payoff creates a hit of dopamine. The brain begins to associate you with that reward cycle. You can also build loops through storytelling. Mention something in one conversation, then revisit it later in a new context. For example, if you once joked about a shared fantasy trip, bring it up days later with a new detail or twist. So, I saw this place that would be perfect for that imaginary trip of ours. It reignites the connection while adding novelty. Another way to build dopamine loops is through small, thoughtful surprises. Not gifts, but moments. Send an article you know they'd love. Drop a comment that shows you were really listening. Reference something they said that they didn't think you noticed. These micro moments of recognition and surprise light up the brain. They're small hits, but they're powerful because they're emotionally tailored. Importantly, you must vary your rhythm. If every interaction is intense, it becomes exhausting. If every moment is predictable, it becomes boring. The loop is built in contrast. Calm followed by spark. Absence followed by presence. Stillness followed by an emotional nudge. This rhythm keeps the emotional system alert and invested. Don't underestimate the power of ending interactions early. Leave some conversations unfinished, some topics lightly opened, a joke half told. Let the mind linger. Let them carry a piece of you into the rest of their day, wondering, imagining, anticipating. That's where the loop continues, even in your absence. When done with integrity and emotional sensitivity, dopamine loops are not manipulation, they're emotional engagement. They're about creating a world with someone that feels alive, evolving, and just a little unpredictable. A space where they never quite know what's coming next, but they know they'll feel something real. And once you've created that loop, the next step is to introduce moments of subtle reversal, where expectations are gently turned upside down, triggering curiosity and deepening emotional entanglement. Reverse psychology in attraction. Attraction often follows unexpected paths. Sometimes what draws people in isn't direct pursuit, but gentle resistance. Reverse psychology, when used with emotional intelligence and subtlety, can create a powerful pull. Not because you're manipulating someone into wanting you, but because you're inviting them to confront their own desire in a way that feels self-generated rather than imposed. At its core, reverse psychology is about suggesting the opposite of what you want someone to do or feel, allowing their natural curiosity or defiance to steer them in your direction. In attraction, this technique is most effective when you're already connected, when there's a foundation of interest and chemistry that just needs a little spark of unexpected contrast. One of the simplest forms of this technique is playful contradiction. If someone is clearly showing interest, you might smile and say, "You're probably too much trouble for me," or "I don't think I could handle someone like you." This doesn't reject them. It teases the idea that they're irresistible in a way that could be disruptive to your emotional balance. It plants a seed that says, "I see your power, but I won't submit to it so easily." This triggers something deep, the desire to prove themselves, to be the exception, to challenge your resistance. But it works because you're not framing yourself as hard to get, you're framing them as hard to handle. And in doing so, you make the interaction feel like a dance rather than a chase. Reverse psychology also works when you subtly minimize your availability or value in a way that invites contradiction. For example, saying, "I'm probably not your type," or "you'll probably forget about me by tomorrow," can ignite a strong internal response. "Actually, you are my type. Actually, I won't forget you." These phrases don't demand attention, they invite emotional reevaluation. But this technique must be used with emotional care. Overusing it or applying it without sincerity can create confusion or distance. The key is tone. Your delivery must carry a hint of playfulness, vulnerability, or warmth, not coldness or dismissal. You're not rejecting connection, you're questioning it just enough to spark curiosity and deepen reflection. Reverse psychology can also be embedded in silence. If you sense they expect you to reach out after every interaction, don't. Let the silence stretch. If they're used to always being pursued, let them notice your absence. The contrast makes them wonder, and that wonder turns into emotional tension. It's not about being unavailable, it's about being unexpectedly restrained. You can even turn this technique inward, saying things like, "I usually overthink everything, but for some reason I'm not with you." This implies a loss of control in your usual emotional patterns, which often feels flattering and intriguing to the other person. It invites them to become more invested, because they sense they've bypassed your normal defenses. When done with subtlety and authenticity, reverse psychology doesn't feel like a game. It feels like a mystery, a gentle inversion of expectations that invites someone to re-examine their own emotional responses. And often, it's in those moments of internal contradiction that true desire becomes visible. And once that desire is alive and curious, you can begin to feed it, becoming not just someone they want, but someone who continually surprises and stimulates their mind. Becoming their source of novelty. In the earliest stages of attraction, what often ignites the connection isn't just compatibility, it's novelty, the feeling of something new, different, unexpected. Novelty triggers dopamine, the brain's reward chemical, which is why people can become hooked on beginnings. But in relationships that evolve, novelty doesn't have to fade. In fact, when you become a reliable source of it, you turn yourself into a constant source of emotional and mental stimulation, something far more enduring than just initial excitement. Becoming their source of novelty doesn't mean you need to be wild or unpredictable. It means you offer variety within consistency. You're grounded and stable in who you are, but you bring fresh energy, fresh ideas, fresh emotions into their world. You are a familiar person who somehow always feels a little new. Start with curiosity. Cultivate your own interest in life. Learn new things, explore new places, think new thoughts. When you bring novelty into your own internal world, it naturally spills over into your connection. You'll have stories to tell, ideas to explore, perspectives that evolve, and that keeps things alive. Novelty also lives in small surprises, unexpected texts, a song that reminds you of a shared moment, a subtle shift in tone during a conversation, wearing a new scent or outfit, changing the rhythm of how you interact. These aren't drastic gestures, but they break the pattern just enough to reawaken emotional engagement. One of the most powerful ways to deliver novelty is through emotional contrast. If you're usually calm and grounded, show spontaneous enthusiasm. If you're usually witty and sharp, reveal a moment of softness or reflection. Let them see different sides of you, not to confuse, but to expand their understanding of who you are. That emotional layering creates intrigue. Ask questions they've never been asked. Offer perspectives that challenge their assumptions gently. Create conversations that feel like mental adventures, not arguments, but explorations. When someone feels intellectually and emotionally stimulated by your presence, they start to look forward to you, not because you always entertain them, but because you awaken a part of themselves they rarely access with others. Becoming their source of novelty also means becoming a little unpredictable in your predictability. Maybe you always say goodnight, but tonight you send a voice message instead. Maybe you usually text, but today you share a memory unprompted. These small shifts create micro-surprises that keep the emotional connection alive. Importantly, you're not doing this to perform. You're not inventing a character. You're simply expressing the full spectrum of who you already are, layer by layer, moment by moment. The novelty comes from being fully alive, not fully scripted. When someone feels that being around you never becomes stale, that even quiet moments with you have emotional depth, that every conversation could veer in a beautiful or unexpected direction, they begin to seek you out not just for comfort, but for aliveness. And that kind of connection becomes deeply addictive in the healthiest sense. Because once you're the person who consistently brings freshness, growth, and emotional movement into their life, they begin to realize the idea of not having you around starts to feel like emotional stagnation. And from that recognition, you can begin introducing the powerful force of delayed gratification, deepening their attachment by making each moment with you feel more earned and therefore more valued. Delayed gratification as a tool. In a world that constantly offers instant rewards, instant messages, instant likes, instant connections, the ability to create and manage delayed gratification has become incredibly rare. And precisely because it's rare, it has the power to become magnetic. When you become someone who doesn't immediately satisfy every emotional impulse, but instead builds tension, anticipation, and emotional pacing, you stand out. You become the person whose presence feels earned, and thus far more valuable. Delayed gratification in attraction isn't about withholding affection or playing hard to get. It's about emotional storytelling. It's about guiding the rhythm of your connection like a well-composed song, building to moments, letting the emotional intensity rise and fall, allowing time and space to sharpen the senses. Think about how anticipation works in movies or music. The build-up, the pauses, the near misses, the crescendos. Those are the moments we remember. They stir something primal. You can use the same dynamic in your interactions. Start with micro-delays. Don't reply instantly to every message, even when you really want to. Let some time pass, not to create anxiety, but to create space. That space becomes a mental placeholder. They begin to think about you, Wonder what you're doing. Replay your last conversation. That silent window becomes charged with emotional meaning. You can also delay deeper emotional revelations. Don't share everything about your past, your heart, or your mind right away. Let intimacy unfold in layers. Hint at stories without telling them. Pause before finishing a thought. Say, "I'll tell you that story another time," and mean it. These soft closures invite the mind to remain open, searching, longing. Even physical moments can benefit from this principle. A long pause before a touch. A playful step back when the energy feels close. Eye contact that holds, then breaks, then returns. These small disruptions to the expected timeline build emotional voltage. They create a sense of earned closeness. Delayed gratification also strengthens boundaries. It shows that while you're interested and engaged, you're not emotionally impulsive. You have control over your energy. You don't need constant validation. That independence is quietly attractive. It signals that you're not emotionally starving, you're emotionally selective. This technique also deepens emotional memory. When a reward is delayed, the mind remembers it more vividly. A compliment given after a long conversation feels more impactful. A kind message sent after a day of silence lands with more weight. A shared moment that comes after a week of distance feels like a small reunion. But it's not about being distant all the time. The key is contrast. Give fully when the moment is right, but then retreat just enough to create emotional hunger. Let them come to you. Let them miss you. Let the absence highlight the value of your presence. When done with warmth, intention, and self-awareness, delayed gratification doesn't frustrate, it fascinates. It turns you into a living story, a slow-burning flame, an emotional mystery that can't be consumed all at once. And that sense of incompleteness keeps people returning, hoping to experience the next chapter. Because once you've become the person whose moments are rare, meaningful, and unforgettable, you open the door to embedding deeper emotional cues, ones that linger long after the conversation ends. Confession echoes. There's a unique kind of intimacy that occurs when someone shares something personal, something they wouldn't say to just anyone. A quiet confession, a subtle truth, a story that carries emotional weight. When you respond to these moments with emotional presence and skill, you create what's known as a confession echo, a loop of mutual vulnerability that deepens trust, attraction, and emotional entanglement. Confession echoes work on a simple but profound psychological principle. What we reveal in vulnerability becomes sacred when someone reflects it back with care. But when that reflection doesn't just acknowledge, it mirrors, amplifies, and expands, it creates a shared emotional resonance. You go from being a person who listens to a person who feels with them. It begins with listening differently, not just for facts, but for emotional tremors beneath the words. When someone says, "I don't usually talk about this," or "this might sound silly, but," they're offering an opening. Don't rush in. Don't solve or analyze. Just be there, quiet, focused. Let the moment breathe. Then echo what they shared, but in a way that elevates its meaning. For example, if someone admits, "Sometimes I feel like I'm too much for people," you might say, "I don't see you as too much. I see you as someone who refuses to shrink, and I admire that." That response doesn't just reassure, it reframes. It transforms vulnerability into value. This is the core of a confession echo, reflecting someone's private emotional truth back to them in a way that redefines their narrative. You're helping them see their own story with different eyes, gentler eyes. And when you do that, they begin to associate you with healing, with clarity, with relief. You can also initiate confession echoes yourself. Share a quiet truth, a hidden fear, a small but meaningful detail about who you are. Not in a dramatic or performative way, but in a grounded, honest tone. Sometimes I overthink my silence, like I'm supposed to always have something to say. Or, there are days I feel strong and days I pretend to be. These kinds of statements don't seek validation, they offer connection. When the other person responds to your vulnerability, reflect back their response. Say something like, "It means a lot that you see me like that," or "No one's ever said it to me that way before." You're not just thanking them, you're deepening the emotional feedback loop. Every layer adds intimacy. Over time, this becomes its own language, a quiet undercurrent that runs beneath even casual conversations. You begin to notice when they're not saying something. They begin to open without being asked. Emotional safety becomes the norm, not the exception. And once you've created that dynamic, where emotional truths are offered and elevated, something extraordinary happens. You become the person they want to go to when something real stirs inside them. Their first call, their favorite ear, their emotional mirror. And from this place of deep emotional resonance, you can begin weaving specific emotional cues and flirty signals directly into your conversations, creating lasting associations that linger long after you've left the room. Embedding flirty triggers in conversation. Attraction isn't built solely on grand gestures or bold declarations. It's often sparked by subtle, recurring cues that stir emotion without overtly declaring intent. These cues are what we call flirty triggers. Small, psychologically loaded phrases, looks, or gestures that create a sense of warmth, tension, and curiosity. When used with finesse, they become emotional landmines, invisible but powerful, embedding themselves in someone's memory and reactivating attraction every time they're recalled. Flirty triggers work best when they're personal, playful, and just ambiguous enough to leave room for interpretation. The most powerful ones are often unique to your connection, based on shared jokes, themes, phrases, or emotional beats that you return to regularly. With enough repetition and emotional charge, these become private signals that spark attraction every time they appear. One example of a flirty trigger is the callback. If during an early interaction you jokingly say, "You're trouble," and they respond with a smirk, that phrase becomes loaded. If, days later, you whisper, "You're still trouble," it hits differently. It carries memory, intimacy, and playfulness, all in a few words. Tone of voice plays a key role. A slightly slower, softer delivery when using these phrases can intensify their emotional impact. Saying, "I know what you're thinking," with a knowing smile doesn't need clarification. It invites imagination. It teases while including them in the game. You can also embed triggers through predictable unpredictability. Say something once that catches them off guard in a good way, a poetic phrase, a confident observation, a playful dare. Then let it rest. Wait a few days or even weeks, then say something adjacent. Their brain lights up with the recognition of a pattern they hadn't consciously tracked, but emotionally remembered. Physical flirty triggers work too. A certain kind of eye contact, a specific look you give when teasing, a touch to the same spot on the arm. When used consistently and subtly, these small gestures become part of the emotional rhythm between you. They anchor the connection in the body as well as the mind. Importantly, these triggers should never feel manipulative or forced. They should grow naturally from shared chemistry. When overused or deployed without context, they lose their magic. But when planted slowly and recalled with emotional timing, they become your silent language, a shorthand for intimacy. Another advanced technique is layered triggers. These are moments that carry multiple meanings at once. For example, using a word that has a double meaning, something innocent on the surface but suggestive beneath. When paired with the right expression or context, it invites them to decode it, and in doing so, they become more emotionally invested. And finally, flirty triggers create anticipation. They give someone something to look forward to, even if they can't explain why. They might not remember the full conversation, but they'll remember how they felt when you said that one thing. And they'll come back for more. Because once you've seeded these emotional cues and allowed them to grow with each interaction, you've started to build a connection that operates on a deeper level, where words are only part of the story, and every glance, phrase, and pause becomes part of your private symphony. From here, the next level is learning how to project your best self, amplifying your emotional presence in a way that becomes naturally magnetic. Self-Amplification Technique. Attraction often begins with a glance, but it deepens through presence. And one of the most effective ways to create a magnetic presence is through self-amplification. This doesn't mean pretending to be someone you're not or inflating your persona to impress. It means identifying your most compelling traits, the ones that light people up or make them feel something, and then learning to dial those traits up intentionally, like turning the volume knob on a song that already resonates. Everyone has something that draws others in. Maybe it's your calm, your playfulness, your curiosity, your emotional insight, your wit. But the truth is, most people use these traits passively. They let them show when the moment calls for it. But those who master self-amplification become architects of moments. They learn to evoke a feeling in others on purpose by choosing which version of themselves to present and when. The process begins with awareness. Ask yourself, what do people remember about me? What kinds of moments make others light up when I'm present? Do people come to me for comfort, for stimulation, for clarity? Once you understand the emotional patterns you naturally create, you can begin to magnify them with more precision. Let's say your strength is emotional depth. You have a way of making people feel safe to open up. In that case, amplify your softness. Let your voice slow. Hold space in silence. Offer words that reflect not just what someone said, but what they meant. Don't just be deep, deepen others. Or maybe your trait is playfulness. Then you amplify energy. You challenge, you tease, you create emotional movement. You let tension build, then release it with a smile or a wink. You become the break in someone's heavy day, the spark of light they didn't know they needed. Self-amplification isn't about being on all the time. It's about being intentional. It's about entering a conversation and thinking, what version of me would be most alive in this moment? You're not shifting your identity, you're stretching it, showing different sides of your authentic self with greater clarity and confidence. Body language plays a huge role here. If you want to amplify calm, let your movements slow. Keep your gestures grounded. Hold eye contact without rushing to fill the silence. If you want to amplify charm, let your posture express openness, your eyes flash with curiosity, your smile linger half a second longer. Even your language can shift. Certain words carry certain frequencies. Use metaphor, curiosity, contrast. Say things like, "You know what's wild about that?" Or, "There's something kind of beautiful about what you just said." These turns of phrase shape the emotional tone of the moment. When done skillfully, self-amplification creates a kind of emotional imprint. People don't just remember what you said, they remember how they became in your presence. They felt smarter, lighter, braver, more alive. And because those feelings were amplified through you, they begin to crave your presence, not just for who you are, but for who they become around you. And once you've mastered that emotional resonance, the next evolution is learning to project deep, unwavering emotional balance, a quality that anchors you in every interaction and draws others in like gravity. Radiating emotional stability. In the realm of attraction, few qualities are as universally magnetic as emotional stability. Not because it's flashy or dramatic, but because it feels like safety in a world that's constantly spinning. When you radiate emotional stability, you become the person others gravitate toward when they want to breathe, reset, or simply be. Your energy becomes a grounding force, predictable in the best way, calming without being dull, and quietly powerful. Emotional stability is not about suppressing emotion or pretending everything is always fine. It's about responding rather than reacting, holding yourself steady, not because you're cold or detached, but because you've learned how to process your inner storms without letting them spill over onto others. It's the ability to stay soft and strong even when the moment feels uncertain. The first step is mastering your emotional tone. People are hypersensitive to energy, even micro shifts. When your presence carries a quiet steadiness, others begin to attune to it. It can be as simple as how you breathe in conversation, a slower rhythm, a calm voice, a grounded posture. These small cues communicate you're safe here. You don't have to perform. Next, emotional regulation. When someone shares something emotional or intense, don't rush to fix it. Don't match their volatility. Instead, absorb it gently. Listen deeply. Reflect it back with care. Say things like, "That makes sense," or "I can feel how much that means to you." These phrases don't diminish emotion, they contain it. And that containment is what people crave when the world feels chaotic. Boundaries are a key part of this stability. Not rigid walls, but quiet clarity. You know what you tolerate, what you respond to, what you let affect you. And you communicate these things not through lectures, but through consistent action. When someone tests your emotional limits, you don't lash out. You lean into firmness with grace. You let your no be gentle but unmistakable. One of the most powerful effects of emotional stability is emotional contagion. Just like anxiety can spread, so can calm. When you carry stillness into a room, it subtly regulates everyone around you. Conversations slow, breathing deepens. People feel more seen because they're no longer competing with your emotional noise. You've become a space of presence. This doesn't mean you never feel upset, but when you do, you express it with intentionality. Instead of exploding, you say, "I need a little space right now, but I'll come back when I can speak clearly." Instead of sulking, you name what's real. You become emotionally transparent, not emotionally leaky. Emotional stability also enhances mystery. When you're not constantly seeking emotional validation, when you're not impulsively reacting to every shift, you become unpredictable in the most grounded way. People wonder what you're thinking, not because you're closed, but because your center is deep. They lean in to understand you, rather than pull away in confusion. Ultimately, when you radiate emotional stability, you become someone people trust, with their stories, their fears, their hopes. You become a harbor. And once someone has emotionally anchored to you, the next step is to express that you are not only calm, but also driven, alive, and purpose-filled, living a life that inspires and invites them to grow beside you. Being passionately busy. There is something undeniably attractive about someone who is passionately busy. Not just busy for the sake of being unavailable, but busy doing something that lights them up, something that gives them purpose, focus, and fulfillment. When you live a life that is already rich with meaning, you emit a silent message to everyone around you. My world is already vibrant, and if you want to be part of it, bring something real. Attraction thrives on polarity. People are drawn to what they don't fully understand, to what they admire from a distance before they get close. A person who is deeply immersed in their passions becomes magnetic, not because they're trying to impress, but because they exude energy. And energy is contagious. To embody this, begin by anchoring yourself in something larger than attraction itself. It could be your art, your business, your craft, your healing, your mission, anything that demands your emotional attention and drives you to evolve. When people sense that you're chasing something meaningful, they begin to view you differently. You're no longer someone who needs connection to feel whole. You're someone who chooses it intentionally. This doesn't mean neglecting others. It means managing your energy with purpose. When you're busy pursuing your path, your availability becomes selective, and that selectivity signals value. When you do give your time, it feels like a gift, not an obligation. Your presence becomes rare, not because you're withholding it, but because you honor it. Sharing your passions doesn't mean lecturing or showing off. It means inviting them into your world. Let your eyes light up when you talk about what excites you. Let them see the version of you that loses track of time when you're creating, building, or exploring. Passion is compelling because it reveals your internal fire, the part of you that isn't shaped by approval. People often try to create attraction by focusing on the other person, studying their preferences, trying to adapt. But sometimes the strongest pull comes when you disappear for a while, when you're immersed in your world and then reappear, glowing with new energy, new stories, new perspective. Even in the early stages of connection, being passionately busy sets a boundary. It says, I want you, but I don't need to orbit around you. This kind of emotional independence isn't cold, it's dignified. It shows that your worth isn't determined by attention. It's rooted in purpose. This also protects you from the trap of emotional dependency. When your days are already filled with movement, growth, and creative flow, you become less reactive to the highs and lows of romantic dynamics. You carry a steadier frequency. You don't chase, you attract, and that makes all the difference. Eventually, people begin to crave your time, not just of who you are, but because of what being around you feels like. It feels like entering a world that's alive, a world that inspires them to grow, to dream, to rise. And when they're around that kind of energy, they don't want to leave. From this elevated state, you're ready to begin shaping your personal story, not just as entertainment, but as a subtle, powerful way to reveal your value and leave emotional fingerprints that linger long after the conversation ends. Telling stories that reveal your value. One of the most captivating ways to create attraction isn't through direct self-promotion, it's through storytelling. Not stories that brag or boast, but stories that reveal. Stories that unfold pieces of who you are, what you've lived, and what you stand for, without ever needing to explain it outright. When done well, these stories become windows into your inner world, inviting someone to step in, stay a while, and connect with something real. The human brain is wired for stories. They bypass logical resistance and speak directly to the emotional mind. When you tell a story, you're not just delivering facts, you're transferring feelings. You're offering a glimpse into your past, your character, your values, all wrapped in a narrative that sticks. The key is to embed your value in the story itself. Don't say, "I'm loyal," or "I'm ambitious." Instead, tell a story about the time you stayed up all night helping a friend move through a hard moment, or about that one project you almost gave up on but pushed through because it mattered to you. Let the story do the talking. Well-crafted stories have three elements: a setup, a moment of tension or insight, and a resolution. You don't need to dramatize. It's not about performance. It's about being real and precise. Paint the moment. Let someone feel the emotion of it. Say things like, "I remember standing there, heart pounding, thinking, if I walk away now, I'll regret it forever." That kind of detail makes it vivid. Stories also create emotional pacing. They slow the conversation down. They add rhythm. When everything else is surface level, a personal story creates depth. And when you offer that depth without expectation, people instinctively lean in. Another benefit of storytelling is asymmetrical disclosure. You're revealing something meaningful, but not everything. You're inviting curiosity. You're allowing someone to earn the next layer of your truth. That layered unfolding creates emotional momentum. It makes them want to know what shaped you, what changed you, what you carry. And perhaps most powerfully, stories allow you to reframe your past. Instead of hiding mistakes or failures, you share them with ownership. You show how they helped you grow. This vulnerability, paired with insight, doesn't make you weak. It makes you trustworthy. It signals that you've faced life, processed it, and emerged more grounded. Pay attention to their reaction. Are their eyes locked on you? Are they smiling at the right moments? Are they breathing slower, leaning in? That's when you know the story is landing. And when you see that, pause for a second. Let the silence speak. Sometimes, the silence after the story is where the connection deepens most. When someone walks away from a conversation with you and says, "I feel like I know them," it's usually because of a story you told. Something true, something vivid, something that carried emotion without forcing it. And once you've mastered the art of revealing your value through story, you're ready to embrace one of the most paradoxical techniques of attraction, using vulnerability not as weakness, but a source of mysterious strength. Turning weakness into intrigue. Most people try to hide their insecurities, their doubts, or the parts of themselves that feel unfinished. But what if, instead of concealing those so-called weaknesses, you reframed them? What if you learned to present your imperfections not as liabilities, but as layers? Parts of your story that reveal your depth, self-awareness, and quiet strength. This is the art of turning weakness into intrigue. When done skillfully, this approach makes you not only more human, but more captivating. Because real connection doesn't come from perfection, it comes from contrast. From the unexpected blend of confidence and honesty, of vulnerability wrapped in presence. Let's say you're someone who sometimes feels socially anxious. Instead of masking it with overcompensation, you might say, "I used to get nervous in rooms like this. I'd stay near the wall and hope no one noticed. It took me a while to realize I was allowed to take up space, even without being the loudest person." That's not a confession of inadequacy. It's a demonstration of self-growth. This technique works because it signals emotional intelligence. You're showing that you've examined yourself, learned from your experiences, and are no longer defined by your flaws. You're not asking for sympathy, you're offering resonance. A mirror in which others can see their own hidden insecurities reframed as beautiful. But be careful, this is not about oversharing or dumping trauma. Intrigue requires containment. You offer a glimpse, not a full autobiography. You create tension by showing there's more to discover, but only if they're willing to stay and listen. You can even build attraction with unexpected contrasts. A person who looks confident but admits to once being painfully shy. Someone who's emotionally grounded but shares a story about losing their temper and learning from it. These inner contrasts make you dynamic. Predictable people are forgettable, but people with layers, they linger. This also creates a deeper form of mystery. When someone sees you as emotionally honest, but not emotionally exposed, they begin to wonder what else is beneath the surface. What you've overcome, what lessons you've learned, what wounds you've turned into wisdom. Even physical flaws can be transformed through energy and context. A scar, a nervous habit, a quirky preference. These become endearing when owned without apology. When you say, "I've always hated my voice until I realized it makes people lean in," you take control of the frame. You write your own narrative. Attraction often builds in moments of small courage. When you risk being seen in your fullness and are met with presence instead of judgment, that memory imprints. And the one who held space for that truth becomes unforgettable. By turning weakness into intrigue, you stop trying to impress and start inviting real intimacy. You give others permission to bring their whole selves too, not just the polished version. And in doing so, you shift from being just interesting to being emotionally irresistible. And from this grounded, authentic space, you're now ready to express your deepest layers, the ones that blend light and shadow, strength and softness, creating a magnetic force that's impossible to ignore. Displaying inner contrasts. Humans are paradoxical by nature. We crave certainty, but are drawn to mystery. We want safety, yet we long for excitement. The same applies to attraction. One of the most powerful ways to captivate someone on a deep level is by revealing your inner contrasts, those unexpected combinations of traits that defy simple categorization and make you endlessly fascinating. Think of the quiet man who's fiercely passionate about a cause, the playful woman who has moments of profound stillness, the ambitious professional who also writes poetry at night. These contrasts aren't contradictions, they're layers. And the more layers you reveal, the more emotionally complex and therefore attractive you become. Why does this work? Because contrast creates emotional movement. It disrupts the brain's natural tendency to simplify. When someone can't easily label you, they keep thinking about you. They replay moments, reanalyze words, wonder what you'll do next. You become a puzzle they enjoy solving, not because you're withholding, but because you're whole. To embody inner contrast, you first need to recognize your own dualities. Are you both introverted and bold? Soft-spoken but fiercely loyal? Logical but deeply intuitive? Own those tensions. They are not flaws. They are your signature. They are what make your energy feel rich, unpredictable, and alive. Then, express those contrasts intentionally. You might share how you meditate every morning, but also love adrenaline sports. Or how you're deeply emotional, but rarely share your feelings unless it's with someone you trust completely. These kinds of reveals make people pause. They make them feel something. Your energy also matters. If you're calm on the surface, but carry intensity in your gaze, that subtle dissonance can be electrifying. If you smile while saying something profound, or tease right after revealing something vulnerable, you shift emotional gears, and those shifts keep others engaged. Another way to create contrast is through environmental dissonance. Wear something elegant while reading in a gritty cafe. Talk about spirituality while dancing to loud music. Let your presence subvert expectations. People remember how you made them feel, and surprise amplifies emotion. Inner contrast also builds trust. When someone sees that you can be both strong and soft, playful and serious, rational and emotional, they begin to trust that you're emotionally flexible, that you can hold space for all of them because you've embraced all of yourself. Importantly, these contrasts should not be manufactured. They must arise from truth, from your lived experience, your unique emotional fingerprint. Trying to appear complex by mimicking others only creates confusion. But when your dualities are real and shared with quiet confidence, they resonate at a soul level. And once you've fully stepped into your multidimensional self, something powerful happens. You stop performing and start radiating. You become a mirror through which others see possibility, not because you're everything, but because you've learned to hold your wholeness without apology. From here, the path forward is clear. To raise your standards, not to create distance, but to invite only those who recognize your value and are ready to rise with you. Showing high standards without arrogance. There's a fine line between confidence and arrogance, but when walked with grace, this line becomes a magnetic tightrope of attraction. Showing high standards without arrogance communicates that you know your worth, you respect your energy, and you're not available to just anyone. But you also remain open, kind, and grounded. This combination is irresistible because it's rare. It signals strength with softness, discernment without ego. High standards are not about entitlement. They are not about expecting perfection in others or crafting an endless list of superficial requirements. Real standards are values-based. They are rooted in how you expect to be treated, how you carry yourself, and what kind of emotional environment you choose to participate in. To embody this, start with clarity. Be clear on what you will and won't accept, not only in romantic dynamics, but in conversation, time, tone, and energy. You don't need to announce these boundaries bluntly. Often, they are best communicated through behavior. For example, if someone flirts in a way that feels shallow, you might respond with subtle silence or a thoughtful question that redirects the energy. If someone consistently shows low effort, you don't chase. You let the space grow, and they feel the quiet weight of your expectation. Your standards are reflected in your reactions. Do you entertain attention simply because it's there, or do you pause and choose where to place your focus? Do you let compliments define your mood, or do you hold your emotional state steady regardless of external feedback? These moments teach others how to engage with you, and they do so without you saying a word. Where arrogance often seeks to separate, "I'm better than you," healthy standards invite elevation. "Here's what I bring. Meet me here if you can." The energy is inclusive, not exclusive. You're not judging others. You're simply filtering in alignment with your self-respect. Another powerful technique is to show generosity within your standards. Be warm, be curious, be present, but also hold a quiet line. That combination creates tension. They sense the openness, but also the requirement. It becomes clear that closeness must be earned, not demanded. Tone matters. You can communicate high standards with lightness. For instance, saying, "I don't really vibe with surface-level connections," with a smile invites conversation without sounding dismissive. You're expressing what you value, not tearing down what you don't. Also, remember that you must live up to your own standards. If you say you value honesty but often hide your truth, people will feel the dissonance. Integrity is the foundation. When your actions match your words, your standards stop feeling like performance and start feeling like presence. This approach also filters people naturally. The ones who feel threatened by your clarity will drift away. The ones who resonate will step closer. And the closer they get, the more they'll sense the richness behind your restraint, the emotional landscape you offer to those who earn access. Because ultimately, high standards are not a wall. They are a doorway with a sign that says, "Enter with respect. What's inside is worth it." From this place of quiet power, you're now ready to fine-tune the emotional nuance of connection, calibrating your energy moment by moment to guide the interaction. Like a dance. Emotional calibration. There's an invisible thread that connects two people in conversation, one that tightens or slackens depending on the emotional signals exchanged. Emotional calibration is the art of sensing that thread in real time and adjusting your energy accordingly. It's how you stay in tune with someone, not overpowering, not withdrawing, but meeting them in the exact space where intimacy can grow. Attraction doesn't just happen when two people are interesting, it happens when their emotional frequencies align. And alignment is rarely accidental. It's created through attunement, subtle shifts in tone, timing, eye contact, presence, and expression. These shifts tell the other person, "I see you. I feel where you are. I'm meeting you there, not out of need, but out of choice." The first key to emotional calibration is observation. Notice how the other person is speaking. Are they relaxed or guarded, light or serious, fast or slow? Don't just listen to their words, watch their breath, posture, expressions. Every cue offers information about where they are emotionally. Then adjust without mimicking. If they're soft-spoken, soften your volume slightly, not to copy, but to create resonance. If they're energetic, let your tone lift. If they drop into something deeper, slow your cadence. These micro-adjustments build comfort. They create a felt sense of, "This person gets me," even if they can't articulate why. But calibration isn't just matching, it's also leading. Once connection is established, you can gently guide the emotional direction. If they're anxious, your grounded tone can settle them. If they're low energy, your enthusiasm can lift them. The trick is to offer, not impose, to invite a shift, not demand it. Timing is crucial. Some people rush emotional moments, trying to force vulnerability. But true emotional rhythm respects pacing. If someone shares something personal, pause. Let the moment breathe. Hold eye contact. Nod slowly. These silences aren't empty. They're loaded with trust. Calibration also means knowing when to pull back. If someone withdraws or deflects, don't chase. Soften your energy. Give space. Show that your presence is not conditional on constant engagement, that your attraction is not desperate, it's discerning. Your ability to shift gears is magnetic. When someone sees that you can move from humor to depth, from intensity to lightness, from listening to leading, all without losing your center, they begin to trust your emotional intelligence. You're not just present, you're tuned in. And tuning in makes others want to open up, to match your depth, to dance in your rhythm. This skill also protects you from over-investing too quickly. By calibrating, you stay in response, not in reactivity. You read the cues, you adjust. You stay connected to yourself while reaching toward the other. That balance keeps your energy clean, your intentions clear, and your presence powerful. Ultimately, emotional calibration transforms ordinary interactions into unforgettable exchanges. It's what makes someone walk away and think, "I don't know what it was about them, but I felt seen, heard, and somehow different." And once you've mastered this fluid connection, you're ready to harness even more subtle tools, those small, powerful moments of nonverbal affirmation that say everything without a word. The "I get you" glance. There are moments in human interaction where words lose their power, and in their place, a single look can speak volumes. The "I get you" glance is one of those moments. It's not about seduction or intimidation. It's not a stare or a flirt. It's a brief, deeply felt moment of eye contact that conveys understanding, presence, and acceptance. And in the landscape of attraction, it is one of the most emotionally disarming tools you can use. This glance is subtle. It usually happens after a moment of emotional truth, when someone shares something vulnerable or when something unspoken hangs in the air. Instead of filling that silence with words, you simply hold their gaze. Not intensely, not for too long, just enough for them to feel that you see them. This kind of look is powerful because it bypasses logic. The person on the receiving end doesn't analyze it in real time. They just feel it. They feel a shift, a soft click inside them that says, "This person gets it. This person gets me." To deliver the "I get you" glance effectively, your presence must be anchored. You can't be distracted, performative, or thinking about what to say next. You have to be fully here. Your eyes must reflect calm, not demand. Receptivity, not hunger. Empathy, not judgment. Think of it as holding space with your eyes. When someone says something that reveals a piece of who they are, let your expression mirror theirs with softness. Let your gaze say, "You didn't have to say that, but I'm glad you did." This silent message builds trust in seconds. You can also use this glance when something funny happens between you, like a shared observation or subtle joke. In those light moments, the look becomes a confirmation of connection. It says, "We're in sync. We get each other." These micro moments accumulate, creating a sense of intimacy far deeper than constant talking ever could. Another key aspect is timing. The glance should never be forced. It must arise naturally as a genuine emotional response. If it feels rehearsed, it loses its power. But if it's real, even if it lasts only a second or two, it lingers. It becomes a reference point in their mind, a memory. This glance also allows you to break patterns. In a world of superficial interactions and fast-paced replies, pausing to really see someone is rare. When you do, it disarms their defenses. It slows their rhythm. It creates a pocket of emotional safety where something meaningful can grow. And perhaps most importantly, the "I get you" glance isn't about taking anything. It's not manipulative or calculated. It's about offering presence. It's about showing up in the fullness of the moment and saying, without words, "You're not alone in this space." Because sometimes the most powerful attraction begins not with chemistry or charm, but with a moment of being truly seen. And when that happens, the emotional imprint lasts far beyond the moment. From this place of deep presence and mutual recognition, you're now ready for the final step, the moment where attraction transforms into pursuit, where the dance shifts and they begin to chase you. The final hook, making them chase you. Attraction is not a static force. It's dynamic, alive, and full of subtle shifts. And perhaps the most transformative shift happens when the balance of desire tilts in your direction. When the person you've drawn in with curiosity, connection, and authenticity starts to pursue you. Not because of games or manipulation, but because you've triggered something deeper, the desire to win access to your inner world. This is the final hook. Not the moment you chase them, but the moment they start chasing you. But here's the truth. Getting someone to chase you doesn't begin at the end. It begins from the start, with how you've shown up, what you've shared, and what you've withheld. This final technique is only powerful when it's built on a foundation of authenticity, emotional layering, and personal gravity. The secret lies in tension without pressure. You've let them feel close to you, but not consume you. You've shared pieces of yourself, but not everything. You've responded with presence, but also held boundaries with grace. This subtle emotional rhythm creates a magnetic gap, not a wall, but a space they want to step into. You must also withdraw intentionally. This doesn't mean ghosting or playing cold. It means creating healthy distance at the right moments, especially after moments of emotional intensity. When you disappear briefly after a deep connection, you allow their emotions to expand inward. They begin to feel your absence as a signal. They wonder what you're thinking. They replay conversations. And in that space, their desire grows. Don't rush to reassure or explain. Let silence work in your favor. This silence isn't punishment, it's respect. You're giving them time to recognize your value without having to remind them. Because the truth is, people don't chase what is always there. They chase what makes them feel more alive. Another part of this technique is emotional contrast. After you've given warmth, give space. After you've been open, become selectively mysterious. After you've shown your passion, return to your mission. This rhythm mimics the emotional flow of romance itself. Closeness, then tension, then closeness again. It keeps the dynamic alive. What makes this so powerful is that it triggers their investment. They begin to invest thoughts, time, and emotion into you. And once someone invests in you, they become more committed to the idea of being close to you. Not out of fear of loss, but because of the emotional gravity you now hold in their mind. You also maintain a subtle frame. I'm open to connection, but I don't need it. I invite presence, not pursuit. But if you choose to chase me, know that it will be met with appreciation, but never dependency. This communicates high value in the most grounded way possible. And when they do begin to chase, when they initiate, reach out, make time, ask questions, open up, you don't punish them by pulling further away. You reward their courage with depth, presence, and honesty. Because you've created a dynamic where they want to earn your attention, not because you've withheld love, but because you've embodied it. This is the final hook, the moment where attraction shifts from curiosity to longing. And when done with intention, it doesn't just spark desire, it awakens the kind of pursuit that leads to real connection.